Sweet, well, hello and welcome to another week at Retropower. I'm going to start this week with some Project Utah stuff, mainly because that's just been our focal point of buzz, if you like, this week. Tons of parts coming in and just loads of pieces of the puzzle coming into place, which is kind of cool. So I'll start with the 3D printed bits. So we mentioned last week that we were designing and making these center console parts. So these were two of the components that make that up, and these go in as the lowest parts in the puzzle, and then there's a billet piece on top of this which is black anodized aluminium and is partially visible but has holes through it for various components, two of which are these, and then the wooden panel goes over the top of that. This one is the phone recess, so there's the hole in the billet panel above is kind of this sort of shape. There's a recess about 1mm deep in this, which is so we can lay a leather top into this. So this is going to be upholstered in leather. That'll be tucked down into here, and then the cordless phone charger sits in here, and the wire goes down through this hole here. And then that gets sandwiched up under the billet piece, and then the fascia panel goes down on top. This bit is basically just a little coin tray that sits behind the gear shifter, and it has two functions. It holds these little switch panels. The switch tops are missing from them at the moment, but they bolt into the back of here, little holes for the cables to come through, and then on the next section, the billet section, there'll be holes cut out for where these actual buttons are, and then finally again there's a little recess in here, and that will have a leather inlay into there, and then where the billet piece goes over and forms the actual recess, all you'll see is black billet and then the leather bottom in it. So that's that piece. On the subject of interior, James has just been making the door panels. And we're totally redesigning those. To be honest, the original Jaguar ones are a bit of a mess. The basic design is just terrible in the way it's made. It's kind of just bent pieces of hardboard essentially that form like a rudimentary armrest, a door pocket which in the front is just a flat flap that you pull forward with an elastic to slip a map into, which we weren't particularly keen on. And just the way it's all made, it really isn't up to scratch. So we're remaking the basic flat door panels in ABS, which is what James is doing at the moment. We do them in plastic just so moisture doesn't affect them. It's as simple as that, really. You'll always see old door cards from old cars all kind of with black staining on them and all wibbly and wobbly because they've just absorbed moisture over the years. So we make them out of something non-absorbent. And then we've just done a quick redesign. We never actually did a visual render for the door cards on our original interior design because we knew we were going to keep them fairly simple. So I literally just got the biros out the other day and did a quick drawing of what I thought might be cool, and a basic armrest, which will also have a recess in it to pull the door shut. And just for the shape of that, I actually kind of referenced the profile of the car, and if you sort of cast a line down the side where the side mouldings go around that rear and up the front there, it's almost like a sort of cross section of an aerofoil sort of shape. So I kind of thought that's probably a reasonable shape to use. Did a quick sketch, fired that off to the customer, and he was happy with that. So we're going to do a little basic door pocket at the bottom. Originally sketched it as straight. We talked about possibly now kicking it up a little at the front. Standard handles, this will be black leather, tan leather for the rest, and then the wood panel that sits at the top. So then for the armrest, literally just got a bit of modelling foam, or in this case, our version of modelling foam, which is boards of Kingspan insulation that have been lying around. Sculpted a rough shape, took a little video of it, sent it to the customer. He was happy with that straight away. So what we're going to do now is get that 3D scanned, turned into a CAD model. We'll then 3D print 4 of them, and then they'll be leathered, and then they'll be fitted up to the door panel. So we're going to make the ABS door panels now. Still have to make the door pocket for the bottom. When these are 3D printed, they'll be leathered and they'll form this handle section at the back, handle/armrest, and we'll be good to go. So excited to see those take shape. Another interior thing was the demist bezels. We've probably showed you the dash top before, but the one finishing piece that goes onto that, what will be black leather dash top, are the little bezels that finish off the demist vents. So these are going to be black anodized alley. We've just drawn these on CAD, had them machined. Details on these, the only real detail is the depth of this boss here on the back. So it's drilled and tapped inside, so it bolts up from underneath so there's no visible fasteners on the top. And then the depth of that boss forms two functions really. A, it gives us plenty of depth to get a tap in there to get a reasonable amount of thread. but also it's the depth of that we've done to the depth of the foam and the leather thickness that will be on the top of the dash. So when you do it up, the bolts do up tight rather than just squashing down until they can squash no more on the leather. And of course, if you do that, the leather over time can relax and the bolts can come loose. So that's the detail on those. Since machining, we've just sanded them and given them a brushed finish. So when they're anodised, they'll have a black anodised brushed finish. Speaking of machined bits, we've been excited to see these, which just arrived today, I think. So these are the bezels for the rear lamps on the car. In previous episodes, you'll have seen us having the body of the car scanned. That scan data was then used to design a bezel, which will sit around the lamp unit, which will sit into here. These have been done in brass because it chromes really nicely, and that's going to be the next step really. We've just checked the fit on these on the car today, which looks spot on. I'll show you in a sec. And then they're going to be sent off to be polished and chrome plated. If I just take one of these over here, or both of them, because I'll probably forget which one's which, I can show you the fit on the car. So when you get it in the right orientation, that's the other one. It is incredibly good fit, and this is where the benefit of the scan comes in, because trying to draw that shape from scratch would have been incredibly time consuming to get the fit as good as that. So can't wait to get those chromed. I mean, they look amazing in brass, to be fair, and it's almost made us wish we'd done all the trim on the car in brass. But yeah, they will be chromed. So that's that. Let me just pop these back over, if you could just reverse up slightly. Gaz hopefully not standing behind you ready to trip you up. I'm just going to quickly look at my list here because I'm bound to forget something. Rack mounts, that was another thing we were going to talk about. And of course the engine. So last time the engine was still in the engine room. I don't think we mentioned it in the last episode. We were waiting for a couple of things there as well. So the Flywheel, with this being a BMW M3 gearbox mated to the 2JZ, it's a custom-made flywheel, which TTV have made for us. Now I wanted to use just an OEM spec clutch, so it has a really nice road car feel to it. This being obviously nothing to do with motorsport, it's not particularly powerful, so we don't need anything mad in terms of clutch. So we've gone for an original equipment E28 M5 clutch on it, and then we've had a custom-made flywheel which has the ring gear on it for the Toyota starter, obviously fits the Toyota crank, and then adapts to the BMW clutch, and the spline on the BMW clutch matches the gearbox. The only other remaining thing on the engine and gearbox package was the gear shifter. So when we did the mock-up build on the car, we'd fashioned a kind of rudimentary gear shifter just to make sure the linkage would actually work at the shortness we wanted it, because it results in a very short linkage here. And that worked fine. So Adam over the last week or so has been working on the final arrangement for that, which has been okay. It's a little bit complicated. We wanted to mount it completely off the gearbox. Originally, the back end of the shift linkage is actually mounted onto the body on a BMW, but we wanted to keep it completely mounted on the gearbox, but have some degree of rubber isolation on it. So we've got these little rubber bushes that sit on these original casing bolts. Had this billet piece machined, and that's got a bush pressed into it there. And then Adam's fabricated a housing that comes back over here, bolts onto that, bolts up there, and then he's machined a little ring at the end, which holds the original plastic BMW ball joint, if you like, that's at the bottom of the stick. Again, so we're keeping it OEM, so it's got the amount of development that goes into making these things reasonably refined is a lot. So we wanted to keep that as an original BMW part, and the stick as well is an original BMW stick with the rubber isolation in it to try and avoid any vibration being transmitted through the stick. So that was the last bits on there. That meant Adam could get the gearbox on, get the engine and box out here. We've taken the throttle bodies off in preparation for actually getting this into the car, and we're almost at the point we could do that. One of the other things we were waiting for was the rack mounts. We saw previously, we 3D printed those as a trial. We've now had the billet ones done. They arrived today. We've just been trialling them on the cross member. That all fits perfect. So that front cross member assembly now is more or less completely ready to go in. We're just going to send the rack mounts off to be anodised, and that's the last process then on that, and that lot can go in. So that is going to be good. Yeah, this is just, lately this seems to be one of those projects where there's just tons of hours going into it and almost no visible change to the car itself. And I just know that there's going to come that day, not too far into the future, where suddenly everything just goes, boof, comes together, and it's just going to be rolling, engine and box in, a few things to connect up, and it's going to be perilously close to almost being able to start minus an exhaust. So that's that. Gordon's car. We talked last time about the fact we were doing some revised engine mounts for it. Progress there, we've now boosted a bit. We were waiting on the company that were going to do those mounts for us, and they were struggling. They use a company to machine the tooling, they use another company to cut the tubes for the bushes, and both those companies seemed very, very slow, to be honest. So we said to the guy who's actually going to make the bushes, look, don't worry about those guys, just send us the drawing for the tooling and send us the drawing for the tubes, and we've machined the tooling and cut all the tubes and machined the tubes, and they're literally being sent off today, so the Bush company can actually crack on and get those done. With that in mind, we're just getting the back subframe back in, engine connected back up to the gearbox, ready, so as soon as those bushes arrive, everything can go in and it's more or less usable then. So that's that. Right, let's go through to the other side. I'm going to grab a brew here. I've got one on standby, of course. The hoodies and t-shirts flew out the door quite well after I mentioned them last week, but I think there's still a reasonable amount of stock, so don't forget you can go on the website retropower.co.uk and get those. In here, we'll pause a moment for, this is the armrest that goes on the seat. There's a folding armrest, we mentioned it last time, that we're making for the seat on Project Utah. So that's now being fabricated. So essentially it's a fabricated steel piece. There's a phosphor bronze bush inserted in each side. There's a very large shoulder bolt that goes through here and bolts into the assembly that's attached to the seat frame itself. And then a little wavy washer in there that sets an amount of preload, so the armrest doesn't just flap up and down. It's got some resistance, but likewise you can still move it. And then there's a machine disc which was through there. I didn't show you, but I'm sure we've got some footage of it, which sits against here and actually sets the limit, so the fully down position and the fully up position. So the next step with this is it'll have 10mm foam. Well, it'll be painted first, then it'll have 10mm foam put around it, which brings the level up to the level of this piece, and then that'll be upholstered in leather and become part of the seat. Nat wanted me to mention, Stu's been doing a lot more work on the Morris now, and one of the last things he's been doing is using this air planishing hammer, this Senga hammer, which Nat will probably mention more of in a future episode. But it's a proper old school bit of kit which he's acquired recently, which he really loves, which was designed originally, I believe, for doing repairs on wings where you needed to form out damage, crash repair damage, and you needed to be able to get all the way around the wing, both sides. But consequently, it's really handy for those sorts of situations on a car as well, where you want to try and do panel work on it with everything in place, and that's what Stu's been working on. So this rear wing, I think he was just starting it last week, and we had a little bit of a revision. So we decided that that back corner there just wasn't quite as it was on the side we sculpted in foam. So he revisited all of that section, got all that to a point where we were happy with it. He's now put this little swage and the return lip on it, and just now he's been working on all of this corner area here. But yeah, a lot of this is English wheel work, but where that Sengar hammer came in real handy was, with all of this in place, it enables him to planish sections like this area here, where he wanted to add a little bit more crown to it, with it actually in situ on the car. And it's a great way to do that. But as I say, Nat will go into that tool in a bit more detail in future. So yeah, I think we're just finishing off this area here. There's various little details to just iron out, little lines to crisp up a bit, and the lips need trimming. And then I think that arch is pretty much there. And I think with those tweaks done now, we're really happy. I actually was standing the other side of the workshop earlier and looked over and said to the guys, wow, this car looks awesome from every angle. And you know, you're really critical of your own work normally, and when you glance at a car and keep seeing it and thinking, wow, that looks good, it's always a good sign that you're on the right path. So yeah, it's going to be doing the same on that side now, and then that will be the arches complete, and we'll get this off the jig and see it on the deck. Right, I'm going to wander this way. Whoa. Laptop in the metal workshop, that's dangerous. So CV8, we were just getting this on the jig last time, and Nat had made his little runner system to put the rear axle in, so that you can actually see is in use now. So he's got the little motorcycle lift on there, and the Jaguar rear subframe, and it's just really handy. It means we can raise it, lower it, slide it fore and aft, and that enabled us to do the preliminary lift up into place, check the position of the axle line, which we do with a laser off the deck of the bed, the jig there, so we could determine exactly what position that axle needed to go in, and that then enabled us to work out how much chopping around of the back we've got to do, which is about what we expected. It intrudes into the shell by probably only an inch, but because of that, it's easiest just to cut that rear bulkhead area out and refabricate it to suit what we want. And we're also changing some of the structure at the back there, because on the independent rear end there is no damper up into the strut tower. The forces are fed into the body or into the chassis, should I say, in a different way. So we're adding some slight differences to the structure at the back there. There used to be a diagonal brace that went from this back of this chassis tube up to those strut towers each side. We're going to lower that down so that the new diagonal ties into the blade, I think they call it, which is the section that comes from the back of the sill and comes up and over, which is where we're going to be tying in the main mounts for that rear IRS. So we just wanted to move the main structure there to be into the area where it's really needed. At the front, obviously, the LSA has been slung into place. We always love this stage. We used to call it dangle and chop, which sounds highly professional, where you basically dangle the engine in and cut out initially what you need to get it in there, which normally is a lot, but in this case, almost nothing. The only tweak we've done on the chassis is that there's a flattened out section, a sculpted section in the side of the rail as standard back there. We've extended it forward a couple of inches just to enable us to sit the part of the bell housing that the starter goes into there slightly. But otherwise, it's all looking really promising. We've got it just sitting on some blocks in here now, but it's within a couple of millimetres where we want it to be. We're just going to stick the body back over and put the front end on so we can just check bonnet clearance. We're pretty confident that's no higher than the original air cleaner, but we just want to be sure of that. And once we're sure of that, we'll set the position of it millimetre perfect, and then we can fabricate the mounts. Which, again, refreshingly, compared to most of the monocoque body type cars we're used to working on, is relatively straightforward because there's nothing in this area to get in the way. So it's making a mount from these four bosses here down to the tube, and same the other side. So yeah, that's that really morale boosting stage where you start putting all the shiny bits in and getting excited about the end result, even though there's a hell of a long way to go still. So that's that. We'll have a little wander through here. The Mustang got to the point now where we could get it in the booth ready to do the first coat of polyester over it. Now that's always a slight, again, talking about morale boosts, that's always a slight morale boost because you just tend to get to this stage in the body, which I'm sure Gaz is only too used to, where you just seem to have been sanding and sanding and sanding for an eternity, and you just get blind to it all and you think you're there, but there's details maybe still to get right, and you just need to get a uniform coat of something over the whole car, just so you can step back and really assess it again with fresh eyes. So that's gone in the booth. That's in the booth now, waiting for its polyester. We've actually had a failure on the workshop compressor. We're waiting for a new part for that, the thermostat for the oil cooler on it. It's running a little bit hot at the minute, and if you run it for any prolonged period, it'll overheat. So we can't do any painting for a couple of days. So whilst that's in the booth ready to get the polyester, but we're not able to do it, we've been getting a bit of a head start on the Chevette. It's fallen into place quite nicely, really, because Scott's actually on holiday this week and he was doing the metalwork on it previously. So Gaz is taking over with the body kit misery, which on most cars, most aftermarket fiberglass body kits are usually miserable. The Chevette one particularly so. Essentially nothing really fits how it should. I mean, one of the major problem areas is actually the front end, where the position the wings have to sit in to get the headlamp aperture to look correct means that the bumper isn't the right width. So you have to compromise one or the other. And essentially on this, it's going to involve keeping the bumper the same width, bringing the wings in to match it, and then re-sculpting the edge of the headlight aperture. even just getting the wings on there properly at all is a pain. I mean, the flanges, the way they mount to the body, horrible. They're at the wrong angle. They've got bits in the wrong place that enable them not to be fitted in the right, correctly. You can't get back far enough, and they're really fragile as well. So we learnt this on the previous one. We just cut them off straight away, form a little 90-degree aluminium section that we can bolt to the original mounts, and gives us a vertical flange to then hang the wing on. And so we then rivet and bond the remaining vertical part of the wing with where we've cut the lower flange off onto that new vertical flange on the aluminium, and that just gives us a much nicer way to fix the wing, because it means when you're bolting the wing to the shell, it's an aluminium flange rather than crunching a fiberglass flange down onto a metal shell. So we've kind of got everything loosely on. Gaz is doing a bit more work on the rear arches at the minute. I keep saying to the owner of this in some of the videos I send him to update him. Of all kind of iconic rally cars, if ever there's one where the transformation from little old lady teetering high sort of road car to unbelievably muscular looking aggressive rally car, I mean, if ever there was a car that embodied that whole look, I mean, these are just awesome. And it's only when you get the kit on, you're just like, yeah, that's a special looking car. So lots of misery, Gaz, but pleasing end result. Yeah, that's it, yeah. So that's probably about it for this week. We'll leave it at that and catch up again next week. Bye.